Morning. This is the regularly scheduled meeting, Board of Fire Commissioners. The date is February 6, 2018, and the time is like 9:05.
Let the record reflect Commissioners Ibarra, Glazier, Hara, Nimberg, Woods Gray are present, and we have a quorum. Madam President?
Thank you. Flag salute, moment of silence.
Please join me in a moment of silence to honor past and present members of the Los Angeles Fire Department who have devoted their lives to the protection of our community. Thank you.
So we start with Commissioner comments.
Good morning. I'd like to start off by acknowledging that February is African American History Month. And while I'm one of those people who does not believe we need a month, I think we need a year. We should remember African American history every day because there's so much history. But I do encourage people to at least learn about something new this month that you didn't know about African Americans, whether it be in the fire service or in the city or in this country, because there is a lot of history to know. And in this department, of course, there's vast amount of history, and we do want to remember those people on whose shoulders many of us stand, who made many sacrifices, and that people are today don't have to go through many of the things that they went through. And we're very happy to have African Americans as a part of our fire service, and we hope that we will continue to increase the numbers. The chief has done a magnificent job on doing his working on helping to make this department a very diverse department, and I certainly appreciate that. I also wanted to share with you, I don't know, some of you may have seen this, the LA Standard, but I pick up all the throwaway papers in my neighborhood because generally that's where you get, throwaway, we call them throwaway because they're free, and they used to throw them and they no longer throw them at your house because of the cost. But I was surprised to see as I opened up the paper a whole spread on the LAFD. And it's highlighting an African American woman who's recently joined the force, our group. So that was really very exciting. And if you haven't seen it, try to read the article, because the article on Tatiana Mitchell it's a really thorough article. And I learned so much about her that we didn't really know, I didn't know personally before. And she has a real deep history of doing a lot of different things. And then there's an ad for the Centurions and an ad for, I don't know how they got this. They have the LAFPD on top of the LAFD hiring. I was confused at first by that. But at least there's publicity in the community, and it's not difficult to get it because it doesn't cost anything. So we appreciate and thank the Los Angeles Standard. Whoever those people are, I have to look them up. Thank you.
Thanks.
I guess since the last commission meeting, we did have the promotional event. And
We did.
and Chief Hogan is here, and he and Chief Villanueva are at the upper crust of the fire department now.
Very good. Congratulations, Chief.
Yes, I want to also congratulate you as well on your promotion to Deputy Chief, and Deputy Chief Villanueva as well. That was a great ceremony. I want to say that I was fortunate enough to attend the Leading with Compassion Implicit Bias training this last week. There were 3 classes, and they trained all chiefs. And it was really incredible, and I want to thank you for making it a priority, and also, understanding the importance of implicit bias, and that we all have it. And the conversations that were stoked and sparked were important and informative. And I also want to thank Chief Bradawi for organizing that as well. And I do have to say that I spoke with the professor afterward, and she was very impressed, she said. The emotional intelligence of the chief officers is some of the highest she's seen. So that matters, and that is a testament to leadership. So thank you, and I also want to thank you as well for looking for funding and understanding the importance of this for all captains as well, and that this is a priority, and this is how we affect change and how we affect the culture. So thank you, and that is it.
I was also at the promotion ceremony. Congratulations to our newly promoted. Particularly excited to see Chief Hogan in my neighborhood, just down the street. And I heard great things about the implicit bias training as well. Excited to see that happening. And I appreciate both Commissioner Nimberg and the Chief for pushing that forward.
Great. Report of the Fire Chief.
Thank you, Madam President. On the 18th, as has been stated, we did have our promotional badge presentation. It's always a well-attended event, very popular. I've lost track of how many times we've done it, and every time it's just great. You know, it's not so much for our members, it's for the members' families who get to see their loved one accomplish their objective to achieve a promotion. So we'll continue to do that. On January 24th, we were in City Council to recognize the retirements of Chiefs Palacios and Butler. Council members Buscaino and Rue hosted that, and it was a great opportunity to recognize their combined almost 75 years of service to the LAFD. On January 26th, we had a press event at Fire Station 64 with Channel 7 and Kitty smoke alarms, where we received a donation of 1,000 smoke alarms for free. And we're going to use those smoke alarms to proactively canvass neighborhoods and install them, or reactively after a fire. We hope not to have to do that after a fire very much, but it does occur. On January 29th, I attended a press conference with Mayor Garcetti and Chief Beck at the Resurrection Church in 25's First Inn. They'd had a fire there, and the timeline is so impressive. I wanted to share it with you that the fire in the church was 2 a.m. on Thursday morning. On Friday at 7 p.m., the suspect was arrested. On Monday afternoon, the suspect was arraigned. That tells you the hard work. They put countless hours over the weekend. They worked collaboratively with LAPD, the Sheriff's Department, multiple fire departments, because this alleged arsonist had been starting fires and conducting vandalism in 15 churches throughout the region. So our people had a mission and good investigative work, and they made this arrest happen. And the community was so appreciative that it happened in such a timely manner. I was blown away that they could do this so quickly. And that's just a testament to the men and women of our arson section. January 31st was the last day for Chiefs Palacios and Butler. And they had a gathering at Operation South Bureau, well-attended event, as well as for Chief Butler. He had a lunch and a breakfast at Fire Station 27, well-attended. That same day, Captain Toby Perkins had a luncheon at Metro, actually at Fire Station 4, because she worked in Battalion 1, and that was very well attended. So it was nice to wish them well and good luck on their next chapter of their life. And then I attended the compassionate leadership training that was mentioned, all 3 days, parts of the first 2 days, and then most of the third day. And I, too, was impressed with the dialogue that occurred there with our chief officers and the Dr. Bendersky. We have to recognize that we have a lot of young people in various ranks, and some of those people may not have been around during the height of attention to work environment issues. And that peaked in about 2008. So I think it's important that we remember our history so we don't do it again and we learn from it. And I think this is a valuable training, and I do want to pursue this for our captains in OSEP training. It's not cheap, so we're looking for funding, and we'll figure out a way to get that done. And lastly was the actual dinner for Captain Perkins was Saturday night down in Newport. Well-attended event by several of our members, and it was a very special night. I stayed. It started at 5, it ended at 10, and a lot of the attendees were from women in the fire service, and I think it was nice to see everybody and listen to all the stories. And we sent Captain Perkins off on her way. She was very happy, very emotional, very appreciative, and I was honored to be there. That concludes my report.
Great. Now we have verbal report on significant incidents from January 16th to February 5th. Do we have any? Oh, or the medical report by the medical director? Okay.
Good morning, everybody. Dr. Mark Eckstein, EMS Bureau Commander. Significant medical incidents since our last meeting on January 27th around 6 p.m. in 64's district. 5 victim shooting with at least 4 criticals. The incident was properly managed, setting up communications, triage, and all of the gunshot victims were transported to Harbor UCLA in an expeditious manner. And on February 1st, it was a widely covered tragic incident at the Belmont Middle School, a little before 9 o'clock in the morning at 3's First Inn, with a discharge of a weapon by apparently a 12-year-old student, striking 2 other students, one being with a gunshot wound to the head, the other one gunshot wound to the extremity. Fortunately, both expected to survive and make a full recovery. The incident was dispatched as an active shooter, of course, triggering a very large response with a coordinated effort and unified command between LAPD and the LA Fire Department. 2 saves to mention. On January 19th, actually I was out in the field and responding with Rescue 33 and Engine 66 on a 30-year-old male. Cardiac arrest on the street, and excellent teamwork and rapid response resulted in the gentleman making a full recovery from his cardiac arrest, leaving the hospital in a few days neurologically intact. And we had an outstanding save yesterday at LAX. As you know, we've about 2/3 of the way, probably 3/4 of the way through our Los Angeles World Airport Enhanced EMS pilot program, where we have cycle teams comprised of 2 paramedics and a med cart with our EMS advanced provider and a paramedic partner ahead of our Battalion 4 resources. There was a reported fall of a 78-year-old female in Terminal 5. The cycle team 51 bought into the call, got on scene in 2.5 minutes, took over bystander CPR, defibrillated the patient, initiated advanced cardiac life support. Engine 51 arrived on scene shortly thereafter to assist. Paramedic rescue took 11 minutes to get there, which is not unusual given the traffic. And the combined teamwork, along with a very, very rapid response time by our cycle team as part of this enhanced EMS pilot, resulted in this woman regaining pulses and was hemodynamically stable en route to UCLA. So this is yet another example of a great save and the positive impact of our trial program at LAX, which we're hopeful will continue in perpetuity at the conclusion of the pilot, which is in middle of March. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have presentations? So moving on to presentations.
Good morning, Commissioners, Chief Terrazas, City Attorney Ms. Iniguez, Eric Scott, Fire Captain, Paramedic, and Public Information Officer. This morning, the LAFD administration is honored to highlight and recognize California Region Task Force 9, the members and their deployment to the January storms of 2018 in Montecito and in Santa Barbara. So we welcome you at this point to turn to the screens there, where we'll show you some photos of the deployment as we tell the story, so you could capture some of the challenging conditions that these members were in. It took place on Thursday, January 11th, 2018, where Urban Search and Rescue Regional Task Force 9, which is comprised of 29 individuals and 2 canine search dogs, were deployed to Santa Barbara and Montecito to assist in search and rescue operations after a major storm deluged the area. The intense rains dislodged boulders, causing heavy mud flow along the hillsides that were scarred by the sprawling Thomas Fire late last year. A number of homes were actually ripped from their foundations. Some were pulled more than a half a mile by water and mud before they broke apart. The death toll from the massive debris flow that buried homes and cars under the torrent of mud and boulders is upwards in 20 in Montecito, with many others injured and some still missing. Approximately 100 homes were destroyed, along with 8 commercial properties, and 300 homes were damaged in the mudslides. Also, we had Strike Team 1001A and 1880C that were deployed to the January storms. They were tasked with search and rescue of those 300 structures. So they had to do structure assessment, evacuation, performing disabilities and functional needs support as well. And additionally, we had 2 teams that consist of 2 live find dogs and 2 human remain dogs to perform search and rescue. So in total, the LAFD sent over 85 personnel to assist Ventura County with their search efforts. We're very proud of these members assisting the residents in need. Of course, our mission is to preserve life and property that often takes us out of our jurisdiction, but our immediate response and the desire to help is what the LAFD is all about. So at this point, we'd like to ask the following members to come up to the podium. Battalion Chief Mark Akahoshi, Captain Sergio Franco, Brett Willis, Adam Davis, Thomas Hinsgen, Scott Quinlan, apparatus operators Eric Acevedo, Holland Bullock, Christopher Gibney, and Ryan Primrosh, and firefighters Anthony Canada, Jesse Franco, Dustin Hurwitz, firefighter K-9 specialist Eric Ingstad and K-9 Java, firefighter Mario Gonzalez, firefighter K-9 specialist Margaret Stewart and K-9 Vea, and K-9 specialist Jeff New with K-9 Faith. Now, there were many other talented individuals that deployed to assist in these storms that are not present here today. But at this point, we would like to go ahead and read the certificate. On behalf of the Los Angeles Fire Department, I want to commend you for the technical expertise, courage, and commitment that you demonstrated during the week-long rescue and recovery efforts at the 2018 XSB January storms in Montecito in January 2018. While being faced with many significant challenges and days of arduous and precarious work, you and the rest of Urban Search and Rescue Team remained vigilant and determined to accomplish your mission. In the course of the mission, your team worked methodically to search a vast zone impacted by devastation, which had difficult access, dangerous, deep mud covering many invisible voids beneath, and sharp, contaminated debris that was spread throughout the search areas. The team's expertise, leadership, and coordination with other government entities, USAR teams, and adherence to all USAR and OSHA rules in the systematic search for victims and casualties was an exceptional display of your talents and capabilities. The citizens of Los Angeles and the members of this department are truly fortunate to have such an expert and trusted members as yourselves. Through your hard work, you have represented the Los Angeles Fire Department in the highest honor and distinguished yourself as a consummate fire service professional. Presented this 6th day of February 2018, Ralph M. Terrazas.
I always say it, I've always believed it, that we are the greatest fire department in the world. Here is another example of our capability. Another thing I like to say, and I'll say it again, because it is in alignment with what I want to point out in terms of excellence. And excellence comes in multiple forms in our department. But the people behind me, they achieve excellence because they have the passion to direct their efforts, do everything they can to do the job to the best of their ability. and that's why they're here today. We have people who are passionate about emergency medical services, about fire suppression, about hazardous materials, and about urban search and rescue. When we get asked to respond outside of the city limits, we have a discussion, myself and Chief Poyer, about our capability. What is our risk inside the city, particularly about brush fires, and what is our risk if we send them out? What does that do to our staffing? And in this situation, there was no big risk to us, so we immediately deployed the task force behind me, and they did great work. You saw the pictures up on the screen. Very difficult, very arduous, very emotional, and it wasn't a one-day thing. They were there for a few days, and we supported them with our peer support team, with our partnership with UFLAC and the psychologists. So we are behind you even when we're not there. We monitor what they're doing. We get reports every day, and we are so proud that we have the capability to send our best to help the people of Montecito. So congratulations. I'm very, very proud of you. We'll have Chief Akahoshi come up and say a few words.
Chief Terrazas, member of the board, and audience, thank you very much. We stand here very honored and humbled. We're honored because we're recognized by the board and the department for the efforts that the team put out while we're deployed out there in Montecito. It took a lot of years of training for these members to reach that technical status of their abilities to perform urban search and rescue during difficult times. Many of the members you see up here are also members of the California Task Force 1, which we traveled across the country to Florida. It took a lot of training throughout the years, so we're very honored in being recognized. But we're also humbled. We're humbled because we are doing the things that we are supposed to be doing on this department, and that's train hard and save lives and property. We went up to Montecito with that thought in mind, but what we really came to a conclusion is that part of our job description is to bring closure to a lot of people that probably lost a lot of family and property. So going up there, thinking we're going to do some rescues, thinking we're going to do recovery, but also knowing that we did closure for a lot of people up there. So we are very humbled for what we did. So thank you again for this day. And the USAR program is moving forward every day. We're putting it on training, recruiting a lot of new members, and the program is growing. So thank you for your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Stand by just a second. We're going to have the commissioners step in.
West and South Bureau weren't here, or I'm sorry, Valley and West or South weren't here.
Cute.
I'm serious.
What?
From another commission meeting.
Dogs? Would you like
They're working.
like the calming puppies that like LAX?
You know what? They do reduce stress.
You know, they're working dogs.
See? Thank you.
Okay. Do we have one more? Chief, do we have another one? No, that's it? Okay. It's hard to top that one, so. Yeah.
Oh, this is yours.
Okay. So consent agenda items?
Move item A through G, but can I just hold E for just a quick comment?
Yes.
So I'll move items A through G minus item E, so A, B, C, D, F, and G for adoption of the recommendation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So just quickly for E on the Coupa, the final closing letter.
Yes. So for item E, oh, sorry, I'll allow the marshal to approach.
I'll be ready for your questions.
Yes. I have no questions.
Exactly.
I have only comments to say this is an amazing piece of closure here, this letter. Congratulations again. I know we've talked about this in the past, but seeing the letter here, getting the closure on all the corrections, amazing piece of work for Coupa staff over the last 3 to 4 years. So congratulations to all. This is a big achievement.
Thank you for your comments.
The first Coupa letter we got was like 80 pages.
Right.
And this is just one, so congratulations. We're really happy.
Thank you.
Tonight
We appreciate your support. Kristen Crowley, Deputy Chief of the Fire Prevention Bureau. All of our Coupa staff is not here. They're actually training, which makes sense, right? So we're so very proud of what they've been able to accomplish over the last few years. They're looking forward to being the leader in the state at this point. Right now we're number 2. So we're looking to be the leader in the state. So we'll continue our efforts, and thank you for all of your support. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Very good.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Move to adopt the recommendation for item 4E.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So now we have a request for priority for 5E, which is report by the department on the fire prevention inspection activity.
Good morning, Commissioners, Chief Terrazas, City Attorney, Roy Harvey, Assistant Chief, Fire Prevention Bureau. I'm here to report on the 4th quarter of activity for the Fire Prevention Bureau. In order to give you an accurate report, I wanted to just go over a couple of things that happened kind of in the background, but also should be considered against the great work and the accomplishments of members of the Bureau. In 2017, one of the first priorities we had was to standardize the legal process. So now when someone is in violation of the fire code, we write them a notice, we do a reinspection, and if they aren't in compliance within the first 30 days, we push it right to legal. What that's done is raised our number of legal cases. When Chief Crowley and I got to the Bureau, there had only been 25 cases for the year. We filed nearly 200 legal cases during this last year.
Wow.
We also adopted Adobe Pro to use email and to communicate the safety watches for the film unit. That sped up the process and made it much more efficient. We also performed a data cleanup to eliminate all duplicate occupancies in the files. We right-sized inspection districts. We standardized the after-action report procedure. We did start enforcing the overdue uncollected receivable policies. And we've been very successful at that, collecting money for people who we do business with. We used RDOs and V-hours to manage vacant inspection districts. We completed over 2,000 overdue re-inspections. And one of the reports when we do, this will really highlight it. We cleaned up a lot of overdues. We had a successful brush clearance program where we completed over 145,000 brush inspections. Coupa eliminated all deficiencies. We standardized the format for board reports and fire stat reports. We've also leveraged technology to create efficiencies using mobile phones, mobile printers, and iPads. And we got a compliment from Chief Hogan about a community meeting he went to last night where the residents got to see the impact of real-time information sharing due to one of the mobile apps. Also noteworthy is the trial R1, R2 inspection program. We did a windshield survey of homeless encampments, and we used the technology to map and share information with other agencies. We got Wilshire Grant in operation. We completed the unwanted alarm trial program. We've attended cannabis meetings, and then we also did a new inspector training program. So all these things were taking place in the backdrop of the outstanding work our inspectors did in doing their inspections. Starting with page 1, I just wanted to highlight a few things. We got in the industrial and commercial section, 93% for central industrial, harbor industrial, 93%, high-rise 100%, valley industrial 100%, and then west industrial commercial, we're only at 79.9%. And as a result of that, a couple of things have happened. First of all, the reason that they didn't make their numbers is due to vacancies, and we didn't have an active inspector list, so we couldn't fill all the vacancies. But with recommendations of the inspectors, we changed our model. This year, once the high-rise and central industrial inspectors completed their districts, they volunteered to go out and help with West LA. What we're doing now is, rather than working within the rigid structure that we have, we changed it up, and now the industrial, commercial, and high-rise inspectors are going to take on a little bit more responsibility, where they'll take the 4 to 6 story industrial buildings and start doing those inspections, and they'll do them throughout the year. So that's going to add support to West Industrial, so at the end we won't be scrambling to make up any shortcomings. So that's basically going to increase our workforce. And that was at a suggestion of the inspectors. Moving on to page 3, re-inspections. I really want to highlight the re-inspections. If you look at the report at the top of the page, it shows the pending inspections and then the number of re-inspections that are done. And if you look at the third quarter, the industrial commercial section did 1,327 re-inspections in the third quarter. And basically what they did is they made that their priority, and they went out there and really pounded. Then the next quarter, fourth quarter, 556. So that's outstanding work besides actually doing their inspection districts. If you move down the page to productivity lost, it shows total days off, 1,073. So basically what happened, we had quite a few long-term vacancies, and that really impacted our ability to do our job, but everybody put their heads down and got it done anyway. That resulted in losing basically 21 members for the quarter. So if you want to, we lost productivity of the equivalent of 21 inspectors during that quarter. Moving down to the early warning report. this is one of the things that we're especially proud of. When we got here, if you look over to the red box, 2 years overdue, that's zeros. 1 year overdue, that's all zeros. And then the 6 to 12 months, right now we're only sitting at 53 total for the industrial commercial section. That's quite a change from years past when those numbers were in the hundreds and then also in the thousands. Moving to page 5, public safety section. Outstanding work from public safety section. Overall, 92%. Film unit, 96%. Institutions unit, 96%. PA, 97%. Valley Public Safety, 98%. And then schools and churches unit is 81%. We were missing 3 members in schools and churches unit. And if we had made it a priority, we would have finished the district. But what happened during this fourth quarter is we found something that we've made a priority. LAUSD has 89 schools that were out of compliance with their Reg 4. So we had to prioritize that because those are hazards that we actually knew about. So now, and you'll probably be getting a few phone calls, we'll be sending LAUSD to legal, and we're going to just basically force their hand to make those schools safe because people are putting their children in our care. So we made that a priority. We didn't get all the schools done, but the schools that we knew about hazards, we're enforcing. Moving to just page 7 at the top of the page. Basically, with the vacancies, it just showed that this is the equivalent of losing 4 members for the quarter. And one of the things with that is we didn't have an active inspectors list during the fourth quarter. We now have an inspectors list. All the vacancies have been filled. Moving to page 8, FDS. We basically met all our goals in FDS. The counterweight time, it's easier to look if you go to page 9. If you look at the average wait time, the red line is the goal, and we came in under the goal pretty much all the time. And Van Nuys, due to staffing, there was just 1 week where we were at the 15-minute wait time, but the rest of the time we were below. Moving to page 10, and that's in FDS, productivity loss. We lost 196 days, and that's due to several real senior members being off pretty much for the whole quarter. Moving to the legal unit. On page 11, first quarter legal package submitted 40, 112 Reg 4 hearings. Second quarter 50, 113 Reg 4 hearings. Third quarter 43, 93 Reg 4 hearings. Fourth quarter 56 legal packets, 85 Reg 4 hearings. So 189 total with 403 Reg 4 hearings processed. That's a little bit better than the 25 that we did the year before. And finally, moving to the administrative section, we still lost a few days off in our legal unit, which amounted to 50 total days off, but we're still able to get the work done. At this time, I'll take any questions.
I just have 2 questions. First, it's great improvement. And I appreciate you walking through the report, and a lot of the questions I had I don't have to ask now. So thank you. So one is, you say you're fully staffed. Are you fully staffed for everything? How many vacancies do you have?
We're fully staffed right now, but many of those inspectors are brand new. So what we have right now is, just for example, in Fire Development Services, we got 3 brand new Inspector 2s. So even though they're Inspector 2s, they're going to be shadowing more experienced inspectors for a while. And then we have 6 brand new Inspector 1s. Also, we're going to be getting 3 more brand new Inspector 1s within the next 2 months due to retirements. So we have a new inspector training class going on right now in order to bring those inspectors up to the state standards. So they do Inspector 1A, B, C, and D right away. And then we have to put them in their units, and they basically shadow more experienced inspectors to get trained up before we put them out there by themselves. So they'll be productive, but they won't be as productive as they will 6 months from now, early on. But at least right now we have the vacancies filled.
Okay, so I mean, as far as like being hamstrung, just a little bit, just because of the novice, members, but
The novice members, and then we still have the problem with the members who are off long term.
what do you do about that?
Well, a perfect example, schools and churches unit is one of our good examples. We actually had an inspector who's been acting captain for the past 6 months, and we honored him with the Fire Marshal's Award as one of the Uniform Employee of the Year, Inspector Lamoris Wilshire. So he's actually been managing the inspection district and acting captain for the last 6 months. For the cannabis, one of the things we did is we got one of the he was previously an inspector in the Cooper unit. He's now a captain. He was off long-term IOD, so we have him doing his light duty in the Fire Prevention Bureau, and he's spearheading the cannabis program. So we've been getting a little creative here.
Okay, so
Very good.
do you have enough people to
No.
do? That's pretty much what I want to know.
We actually need people. One of the big storms that we see coming on the horizon immediately is with the cannabis unit.
Okay.
It's going to ramp up slowly, but we've been tapped for 8 Inspector 1s, 1 Inspector 2, a couple of admins, and a captain for that unit. We definitely need them. We're anticipating, and we haven't been able to confirm it, but we expect between 1,600 and 2,500 growing operations, indoor growing operations in the city to support the 290 facilities that are going to be licensed for providing recreational marijuana. That's just a best guess. We won't know till we actually get out there. A couple of issues that come with that is depending on what they're doing to cultivate and cure the cannabis, the inspectors in the unit may have to suit up to as much as a level B to even conduct the inspection. So we're going to have to do quite a bit of training to make sure that the inspectors recognize that hazard and how to deal with them, and then also all the different hazards that go with trying to grow as much product with as few aisles and exits as possible. So thinking of our external customers, the citizens, we need to make sure the city's safe, but that's going to create some serious issues for our internal customers, the firefighters out there, with security concerns and everything else to make sure that those buildings are safe. The fires that we've had so far dealing with cannabis operations has mainly been due to the electrical. They have unbelievable electrical capacity in those buildings because they're using hydroponic systems, and then they also have grow lights and internal. They basically make outdoors indoors and control the environment. And then to cure it, years ago we had what we call the honey oil fires. Well, think of an industrial level operation now to cure the product. So we need to be able to deal with that and get ahead of it. So we actually need the funding for our cannabis unit yesterday.
Okay, is there anything that we can do as a body?
We do have a budget line item just specifically for cannabis, as well as a few other inspector positions. We do anticipate it will be funded. It is a fee-supported ask. So I think we have plenty of information that Chief Harvey has shared with us that would justify us getting those positions. So I'm very optimistic.
And in the immediate, is there anything that we can do?
Immediately, not yet. I don't think it's ramped up, the cannabis operations. It will ramp up. I know that there's been planning in advance of the people coming into the Fire Prevention Bureau. So I think the course we're on is going to be the most effective way to proceed.
More questions?
I don't have a question, but comments. It appears that the morale in the department has improved.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like it to me.
Chief Crowley's pretty easy to work for.
Because I hear people volunteering and organizing and doing things that I just had not heard before. And I'm really pleased. That was a great report, and thanks for presenting it the way you presented it. It helps to answer a lot of questions. So I appreciate the department's work in that effort also. And also I want to thank Chief Harvey for responding to the needs of the citizens. For some reason, the citizens have my email address or phone number, and I'm always getting calls from people about issues in the neighborhoods. So when I called him recently about a smoke detector that was just going off and off and off and disturbing the neighbors, they were right out there. The people were so happy because they said they had contacted their city council, they contacted no help. And they said, wow, they were very pleased. And thank you, Chief Harvey, for helping to make our citizens happy, because I know that was had to be annoying for them to keep looking for somebody to call. So I really appreciate that. I am concerned about the cannabis issue. Do we have any control over where they locate these growing places? That's not in our department, huh?
That's not in our department, and it's also not really in the agenda. So I think we have asked the department to brief us on that. So when that comes back,
20th.
So when that comes back, then that could be a more appropriate question.
I am just concerned that we're inspecting the ones as they come online, because I think they've started to approve, and would like to hear more about that inspection process when we do have that report, because I know we have a few that have been approved. Thank you very much to your department.
Oh, I have one other question really quickly. Thank you. The brush clearance re-inspections?
Yes.
There's no information on the re-inspections.
Oh, no? Oops.
Yeah, and do you have that somewhere? And there's the government parcels were at a 51% fail rate. And I just wanted to ask about that as well. It's on page 4, the bottom.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Okay, so what's the exact question now?
The re-inspections?
Yes.
For a brush, for the fail rate, and you have 51% of government parcels at a fail rate?
Oh, okay.
What are the re-inspections and when?
Oh, they've all been completed. What happens is once they're done, then if they fail and they don't clear, then we put them in the bid process, and then they're cleared, and we just charge their property tax bill. One thing that you did mention that I'm glad you did, with the government parcels, one of the things that we've recently proposed, and they agree, so we're working our way through it right now, also came out of the brush unit. Basically, in the past, clearing government properties has come out of our budget. So basically what happens is we clear the parcel, it's on our dime, then we bill them and they reimburse us. So one of the ideas that came up from the members of the brush clearance unit is why not create an escrow account for the agencies like DWP, Rec and Parks and all those, where the money comes out of their budget instead of ours, which made perfect sense. So we approached them on it. They're open to it. So right now we're working on getting the procedure for having an escrow account where they can estimate how much it is. That would eliminate about a 120-day delay of us actually getting reimbursed for money that we spend out of our budget.
Oh, good. Wait, just to clarify, did you say completed means that they get fined, or completed means that it's actually cleared and fined?
They're all cleared.
Okay, great.
What happens, they go, once they don't comply, they go to a hearing, and then the contractors that we've already hired, they go do it and put it on their property tax bill.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks for the report. I think the you mentioned getting a standardized format. I think this is a really great format for the report. I think it's a model report really for any other parts of our department that I think are in kind of a similar transactional kind of business here, to be able to say, be able to show the data like this. It's super clear. So thank you for that. On the so just on the goal setting, we've talked about this before, but when you say inspections are completed and we are at 95%, does that mean that it doesn't mean that necessarily they haven't been inspected? It could mean that the inspection is remaining open for some reason. Is that right? Or does it mean like nobody's actually touched the building?
No, if the inspection has not been completed and signed off as being compliant, then it doesn't show as a completed inspection.
Right, but that doesn't mean that an inspector didn't necessarily, it could mean an inspector didn't make it there, but it could also mean they went there, found something that hasn't been fixed yet, and so it remains incomplete. Is that correct?
Yeah, it remains incomplete.
Okay.
So even if it's in the legal process, it will be incomplete.
It wouldn't show up as incomplete.
Right.
Okay. So, I would think about whether or not, since that's the case, and sometimes there are inspections out of your control, whether or not 100% is really the goal. Just to kind of help us think about, because if you tell me 100% is the goal, then I'm looking at it saying, well, you didn't meet the goal. But if you say, well, look, of course we want to get to 100%, but there are issues that are outside of our control because things are illegal or we're having a dispute with the owner. So really what's more realistic is that we're going to get to 95. That's okay. I would just say come up with what you now have a year of data under the way that you're operating now. And so I would say think about what is an ambitious but realistic goal for your department to hit so that we know that like, 95 is really the goal. We hit 95, so it's good. It's not a point of concern that we're at 93.
We've actually discussed this. Yeah. What happens, since we're dealing with fire life safety, our goal is not to take people to court or hammer them or anything like that. We actually want them to make their building safe.
Right.
So since we're dealing with life safety, 100% is the goal. Like even like LAUSD is a perfect example.
Yeah.
We're not going to be happy until every school is in compliance. Like having 90% of the schools in compliance is not going to work, because if we have an incident at that 5%, somebody's kid's going to get hurt. So when we go out, our goal is not to find people, take them to court, do anything like that. We want them to make their building compliant with the fire code.
So I'm totally supportive of that. I'm more looking at this from a question of like, if that's the case, then, should we be concerned that we're only at 93? Is that reflect a shortcoming of work, or is it because there's items outside your control? And that's all I'm getting at is that, I don't want to say like, hey, you guys didn't hit 100% because you didn't do enough work. It's you didn't hit 100% because
we'll do better, sir. What happened? We actually didn't get our whole team in place until around July. If you remember, Chief Boyd passed away in April.
Yeah.
When we got here, we were bringing in new chief officers. Now we got 3 chief officers that work well together. Then we also have Hanny and Royce supervising their section.
Don't mishear me. I'm not trying to say hold your feet to the fire more. I'm trying to say how do we reach a number that we feel like that is realistic for us to have as a public report for the number that you want to hit. So I'm trying to give you some leeway.
I'll go with 99.95.
But you're saying 100 is 100. Okay, then.
It's 100.
100 is 100. Okay. Good intentions never go unpunished. On the overdue, I certainly appreciate on the industrial that you're saying that, on the industrial commercial, the numbers seems like within a range that is, reasonable. On the schools and churches, though, I recognizing what you're saying about the the focus on Reg 4, I am a little concerned that the overdue by over a year is creeping up, and we are at nearly 300 there. What is your recovery plan on trying to bring those numbers down?
Right now, we have 89 schools we've identified that we're getting
on the
ready
Reg
to file.
4, yeah.
And we had a training issue in the Bureau, so we had to set up a training program to train all the inspectors to do the Brycer inspections. We have identified a problem with Brycer that we're working with them. They have a problem with their records. So some of the occupancies won't show us complete until Brycer actually does the entries. And it's not as big an operation as it might sound for someone that does has a contract with the city of Los Angeles.
Uh-huh.
So we don't do the entries into Brycer?
What happens is when somebody is compliant, they notify Brycer, and Brycer does the entry. We cite the occupancy when they're out of compliance. But Brycer they notify they should have notified the building owner before we go out there. But one of the things that we do is we have our inspectors check all the records before they go out and do the inspections. And if it's not in compliant, then we make sure that, first of all, the Brycer has a record of the building, and then do whatever we need to do to get them up to date.
Okay.
They have a list of contractors that are qualified to do the different type of Reg 4 work and stuff like that. But Brycer is not as big an operation as it would sound like. That's the only thing I can tell you.
So are the 270, are those all Reg 4 related tests?
Mainly Reg 4.
And we're waiting on somebody else to handle that for us.
Well, no, we're taking them to court. What happened is before, LAUSD was very good at pushing the can down the road. Mm-hmm. And our inspectors had a policy to work with them. And we don't do that anymore. So they're either in compliance or they're not, and that's it.
So you're cracking down.
We're just, yes.
Okay. So are we going to see that? I'm looking at the legal packets. We've got 403 hearings processed, 189 in process. Are we going to see? When do you think we'll see that 270 number drop down? I mean, are we going to see that bump into greater than 2 years? Are those all just sort of dependent on a legal process?
I would hope they would comply pretty quickly. We don't have control of that. It's going to create a budget problem for them. But we don't want the liability on the city. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to know about a problem and not pursue it with vigor.
Okay. So is it 89 of 270 are those overdue LAUSD cases, or are those 270?
Actually, there's more, but there's 89 that we're writing right now.
Okay. And the rest of them are not just LAUSD. It could be private schools or churches.
Yes.
Any sort of variety there. Okay. Yeah, my interest is just in not seeing that number continue to creep up and move into the greater than 2 year number, because we've obviously been there before and we don't really want to go back there again.
No, it'll be more court cases filed.
Okay, it might be helpful just to be able to say a little more explanation on why that number is higher. Just saying like those are all in legal, so that it's not that. It doesn't appear that we haven't inspected them, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Okay, we haven't cleared them. Okay.
That it's not because we didn't have inspectors that went out and laid eyes on it. It's because we did lay eyes on it, and they're in a process of resolution that is taking time. That's, I think, what I'm trying to get at.
We'll do that.
Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Otherwise, seems like things are moving along, so thank you.
Okay.
Madam President, I have one other question. Do you inspect the private schools?
Yes.
Okay. That question just came to me. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Move to adopt the recommendation for this item 5E. Item 5E.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. So moving on to 5A, it's the report by the department on the LAFD Gender Equity Plan.
Yes. Good morning, Madam President, board members, council, Chief Terrazas, Marcella. My name is Nikki Berdowie. I'm a battalion chief, currently serving as the executive officer for the Chief Deputy of Administrative Operations. And I'm here today to present an update to the Gender Equity Action Plan that was brought before this commission in August of 2016. The plan still remains dedicated to increasing the number of females firefighters on the job, creating a more cohesive and inclusive work environment, and promoting equal opportunities for and the advancement of women into leadership roles. In the area of recruitment, we've made excellent strides. I know you get reports from firefighter recruitment section and recruit services section, so I won't go into great detail on that. But I will say that the 2016 recruitment campaign nearly doubled the number of female applicants from the 2014 campaign. We went from 4.86% in 2014 to 8.28% in 2016, so that's amazing. So far, we have had 12 recruit academies that have completed, and out of those classes, we have produced 29 successful female firefighters. Unfortunately, during the same time period, we've lost 9 firefighters due to retirement. So the totals as of January 8th, 2018 show that we have 102 firefighters. And this represents about 3.1% of the sworn workforce. Initially, I believe the report stated 2.7%, so we are making some strides in that percentage. We also have seen during this period, we have our first female promoted to the position of fire marshal. We have seen our first African American woman promoted to battalion chief, and we also saw our first woman complete the fire academy at the top of her class, which is pretty awesome. The second part of the plan addressed the need to create a positive work environment that fosters inclusion, equity, and respect for a diverse workforce. So within that overall overreaching goal, we have mandatory EEO training for all supervisors. We also included an EEO challenge training course that all members must take now. We developed a women's strategic planning work group that was spearheaded by Commissioner Ninberg. And we've had several meetings. We've had Commissioner Woods Gray, we've had our independent assessor, as well as several firefighters of different ranks join in on those meetings. And one of the goals was aimed at improving the work environment for women. So out of that work group, in the next iteration of the LAFD's 3-year strategic plan, there will be added in a strategy and it'll say, create and implement an organizational structure to address human resources, personnel management, and workplace environment. And under that strategy, there'll be 5 specific goals. That's in the report for you to read. Additionally, as Commissioner Ninberg stated, we just completed for all chief officers the Leading with Compassion training, which went really well. And that training is to help us to recognize behaviors in the workplace that inhibit equitable professional development for all employees. It's focused on creating a more inclusive culture and enhancing team cohesion. The third component of our plan focuses on professional development. As the report says, professional development is a planned, progressive, and lifelong process of education, training, mentorship, self-development, and experience that one gains during their career to aid in developing competency and upward mobility. In this area, the department is making great strides to provide training opportunities that are equally available to all. Some of the courses that are offered at our in-service training section is Engine Academy, Truck Academy. We have a multitude of California State Fire Officer courses. We teach a lot of the national wildfire courses. You can get certified to be deployed at brush fires. And we also have core classes that are given to newly promoted members in the various ranks. And the sign-up process has also changed. So instead of it being kind of based on your seniority or what credentials you may have, it's now, they have an Eventbrite link that is also listed. So it's first come, first served basis when you're signing up for the classes. So that's a little more equitable process to get into those classes. The training division is also in the process of developing a professional development center. The center will provide rank-specific education program as well as assistance to members wishing to get their formal education. Currently, the department does have agreements and contracts with East LA College and Laverne University. Laverne teaches classes at Frank's in the following degrees: Emergency Service Management, Organizational Leadership, Public Admin, and Business Admin. There's an agreed upon reduction in tuition cost, and available, the credits and units are transitioned into the degree from the work-related courses that are taken. So in conclusion, the department is making great strides in addressing all three areas of this plan. The overall plan remains to increase the number of female firefighters on the LAFD, while at the same time creating and upholding an inclusive work environment that promotes fairness and fosters equal participation of all women in all positions. There was a question raised in regards to doubling the number of female firefighters from our initial amount that we had. So that number is 164. So if we did some calculations and we determined that over the next we're gonna have 8 drill towers in the next 2 fiscal years. So with that being said, considering the attrition rates we're gonna have as well, we're gonna need to have at a minimum 9 women in each class successfully complete the drill tower in their probationary year. So with that said, I have nothing further unless you have any questions for me.
I'll let you guys start with that. Go ahead.
Great job on the report. Just really impressed with the strides that the department has made in gender equity. And I'm not surprised to learn that our chief officers have a really high emotional IQ. I mean, as a lawyer, I can tell you lawyers have very low emotional IQ. So it's always been my impression about not just the chief officers, but also our rank and file. So I'm glad that we're making, this a priority for everybody, because everybody has the capacity to sort of grow and learn more about this. So especially for women. So congratulations and thank you for all your work.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I'd just like to commend you on putting all of the information together and doing a very thorough report.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks.
Yes, thank you.
So that's 5A.
Oh, wait, did you have a question? Yeah, hold on.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry. Just a quick question on the solid report. Obviously making some good strides on the recruitment side. A question on do you track when our females come out of the tower? Female firefighters come out of the tower. How they do in their first 3 years or 2 years? So, which is to say, do we retain them when they come out? Because I see we bring them on the job, and then we've lost some retirements. In retirements, does that include folks that may fall out during probation or shortly thereafter?
The retirements I'm talking about is they have 20, 25 years
I
on,
see.
and they're in the drop program, and they're
Got
for
it.
sure leaving. But every applicant, I know firefighter recruit section, they track everybody. So there's an applicant system, a Google platform system, where all the applicants are put in there, and all the training that they're taking, they track all that stuff. When they are in their probationary year, they still have a mentor. So that mentor is continually reaching out to them. And we don't have anything specifically related to tracking them at the 3-year mark. I mean, we can look at that.
Random number, but
Yeah.
I think it would be interesting to think for subsequent reports if we are, when you say 29 successful female firefighters, does that mean that, what does that mean? Does that mean they graduated the academy and
Yes.
cleared probation, or just graduate academy?
They graduated the academy. There are several that have completed their probationary year, and there are a few still that are still in their probationary year.
Got it. So if they did not if they graduate but did not complete the probationary year, that would not be counted in that number.
Correct. But we have not lost any female firefighters during the probationary year.
Right.
So that's
No.
something else that's positive.
Okay, that's great. Okay, thanks.
Wait, I have.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate it. Good question. I appreciate the report, and I appreciate that the department is willing to look at this and assess it transparently. I am concerned that we have to graduate 9 per class. I think we can do it. I know that this new recruitment campaign will be heavily targeted towards women. I met with recruitment about that, and it's good. I also want to see a little shake-up on the racial makeup of the females as well.
Yeah.
I think that, but we really have to, and I know the department's looking into it, but we've really got to address the fact that we're losing 2.5 times the females in the academies compared to the men. So in the drill tower. So it's more than 40% compared to 20% of men in the drill tower. So I'm just saying, like, I know that we're working on it. It's something that I want to see us be really successful with, and I think we can do it, and I appreciate all of the work that everybody's come together. And that's just my concern. I'm just, letting you know, because I want to make sure that, like, I know that you want this number, and I want this number. I think it's going to affect change. I think everybody here wants this number. We've got to figure out what's going on and what we can do. And I appreciate everybody, really honestly looking at this and taking, an attempt to address it and seeing. I mean, it is difficult. They're retiring. You got people leaving. I just heard yesterday a woman with 9 years just because she's moving to the East Coast, and that's not because of anything, but.
Right.
She's moving to the East Coast,
Yep.
But that affects the percentage,
Mm-hmm.
In much greater way than, some guy just retiring. So
Yeah,
it's constantly backfilling. And
Right. And it's going to be like that for the next few years because the women on the job, most women on the job have, like 60% of the women on the job have over 20 years on. So within this next, up till 2020, we're going to see 11 females of varying ranks retire. In fact, we just had 4 that retired on January 31st. So, so until we can kind of get some younger women in and kind of curb the retirement part, the numbers are going to be difficult to reach, but we'll keep going.
I know,
keep trying.
And I appreciate it, and I appreciate setting the bar high. We did set it high, and I will do everything I can to help get there.
Just to put in a plug on the I think that you talk about the youth programs in here. If we can achieve the goal of the youth program to really get to 30%, and really that's a lot of that's we have the girls camp. The girls camps are great from an exposure standpoint, but they only really help us if we see conversion from a girls camp into a cadet program,
right.
Or from a fire academy or from a magnet into a cadet program. And then what really then completes that connection is that train to hire program that we've talked about. So I think it just adds more urgency to getting that train to hire program because in theory, if we are able to have a train to hire aspect there that pulls folks out of our cadet program who are successful, we will see greater rates of completion of success in the drill tower. But I think we should. The other thing is, we should always ask ourselves what else we can do to make the LAFD in the public perception be known as a good place for women to work. And I think certainly the training and implicit bias training is a great example of ways to start changing that perception. But as long as there is a perception that, if there is a perception, I should say, that it's not a good place for women to work, all the recruiting in the world isn't going to change that problem. So, I think it's great that we're taking a look at ourselves. Things like changes to the uniform, which sound like they're finally have come into play. Those little things speak volumes. And so I encourage us, huge thanks to Chief to Rebecca Nimberg and Commissioner Nimberg and Chief Terrazas for investing in things that help us change those small things. And Commissioner Woods-Gray for your investment in this as well. But because those little things add up, and I think people think that, oh, well, what's the big deal? The buttons are on the wrong side of the uniform. It's a big deal, I think, to people say, do my clothes fit right?
Right.
So, keep up the work on focusing on what are those little things that help us gradually change the perception. Thanks.
Okay, we'll do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'd just like to also add that Chief Terrazas, when we meet with him, he's very open, receptive, and has been a great part of making these things work.
Yes.
And without his open-mindedness, I don't think things would go as far
That's true.
as they have gone. I also relate to the African American loss and the retirement, because we're also losing African Americans in the same situation. And I want us to work on, everybody in the department, to work on this assistant chief level with 000s, because I know that the captains and the battalion chiefs and the other chiefs can find some star out there that needs to be polished and move them toward that direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I do have a couple words. This is a very important topic for the fire department, not only now but in the future. I thank the board and the mayor for their support on this issue. The 5% goal, I knew it was ambitious when it was stated. What I didn't know was the retirement rate. And that's a variable that's unknown. You pointed out that we had a lady leave with 9 years on the job. You can't account for that. You keep tracking it. We did the math again yesterday and again this morning. I think 9 females per class is very optimistic. We have 7 in the current class in progress at Drill Tower 89. Excuse me, Drill Tower 40. That's where I went, Drill Tower 89. That was a long time ago. All these numbers in my head, they're starting to be transposed. But we've been graduating about 4. We've hit 5 twice. So we did the math. We figured, well, if we graduate 4, that's a more realistic number times 8 drill towers. That's 32 additional, adding to the 91, which factors in the retirements. We'll have 91. Add the 32 to that. We're almost at 4%. So that's the historical norms, the recent past. That's if it continues. Now we could get better, because our candidate pool is doubled from 4 point whatever to 8 point something. We could get through the drill tower. There's 3 reasons our recruits, male and female, don't succeed. Number 1, their academic score does not meet the minimum. Number 2, there's an injury. Or number 3, they have a personal reason. LA County, they want to go work for LA County. They get a job offer and they leave. So we understand the factors that play into this. We do the long-term math. And my only response then and now is we keep the pedal to the metal. We keep it at 5%. That's our goal. We focus our campaign, our new campaign like the last one, focus on female recruitment. We know we're going to get good males. We don't really have to try that hard. We're looking for high-caliber female candidates. And then on top of that, we're competing with other fire departments for them. So it is a huge challenge, but I'm very proud of our progress. When you look at our current number, a little over 3%. You look at other fire departments, LA County, 1.5%, New York, 1%. People envy our diversity, and I want to make it better. And I think with a collaborative effort with Women in the Fire Service, the Commission, the Mayor, we are making progress. With the youth programs, that's a feeder pool. And I do want to get to train, to hire to work eventually. That's in our strategic plan. All the things we're talking about that's going to get us there, that's in our strategic plan. So I assure you we're not going to let off the pressure. We're going to continue to work hard, and we will get there.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay, move to adopt the recommendation for item 5A.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5B is report by the department on the 2016 California Supplemental Code changes.
Good morning, Madam President,
Morning.
Commission, Chief Terrazas, City Attorney. I'm Scott Miller, Fire Captain in the Fire Prevention and Public Safety Bureau. And I'm here to talk about the 2016 California Supplemental. In 2017, the Los Angeles City Fire Department last updated its fire code. We updated our fire code based on the California fire codes, which were updated effective January 1 of 2017. State of California, in their code adoption process, adopts a full fire code every 3 years, but they have provision every 18 months to make a supplemental adoption if there's something that needs to be done. They can't wait the full 3 years. And in this case, the state of California found many items that they didn't feel were capable of waiting until the 2020 adoption process. The reason for these code requirements is so many different business models that are coming into the state of California that require codes that weren't provided for in the previous code cycles. And some of the examples of that are mobile fueling, which is basically, it's a Uber model for fueling where instead of going to the gas station to get your fuel, they bring the fuel to your car. There's a couple of different models within that. The big model is a corporate model where they bring a truck into the parking lot of the corporation as part of the executive package. They fuel the cars in the parking lot. They come up with a high-quality truck that's been permitted and holds 1,100 gallons of fuel and go through and fuel at that fixed location. There's a secondary model that uses a much smaller truck, but it basically is serving the same customer base. And then the third model is somebody who takes 5-gallon cans secured to the back end of a vehicle and then goes to the location and fuels using those 5-gallon cans. Any one of those models that we talk about is not really regulated well in our current code process. So the state of California, working through the ICC, has developed code requirements for those models to ensure that those business practices can be adopted within the state and done safely, and creating the permitting processes for those models. Another area that they're looking at is with the changes to the laws with regards to cannabis. It is required that we look at some other processes that we aren't used to, which, for example, plant extraction, which is that process that they use to make honey oil, a very hazardous process. When it was an illegal process, nobody needed to regulate it. Now that it's going to be a legal process, now we need to know how to regulate it. So we have a whole chapter that's been developed for plant extraction and the hazardous process that goes with that. A secondary area with the cannabis is the use of carbon dioxide for enrichment of the environment and the growth process. That creates a hazardous process, and again, they needed some regulation adjustments to manage that process. In the area of energy, the photovoltaic business practices needed to be adjusted, and so that area was looked at and adjusted to meet the needs of the photovoltaic industry. Stored energy, which is battery. We've heard of the Tesla wall, the stored energy wall. That's a different battery than we used many years ago. Our regulations right now are basically looking at stored energy using lead acid batteries. Well, that's not what the Tesla wall is. And so they've gone through and revised the code requirements that were required for stored energy. And then the last major area was in refrigerant gases. We started out and everybody used Freon in their refrigerators. They determined that that was a ecologically unfriendly method. They went to another refrigerant source, and they've determined that also was not a good source. And now they've come to another source of refrigerant gas. One of the byproducts is it's a flammable gas. So they need to put some requirements in to manage those flammable gases. The request that we're making is to move the California State Supplemental Package to council and the mayor to recommend that we adopt it into the Los Angeles Fire Code so that we would be enforcing those requirements within our own local ordinances, as well as develop all the permitting process that are required to manage the information that goes along with those processes. And now if anybody has any questions.
So just to be clear, we don't make any changes to what the California supplemental code sort of establishes. We just develop an ordinance for Los Angeles, right?
That is what we're recommending at this time, is that we just develop an ordinance to implement the requirements that are contained in the supplemental package.
Okay.
And those laws will go into effect for California whether we do or do not adopt an ordinance. But if we do not adopt an ordinance, we do not get any of the permits, any of the tracking that goes along with the permit processes.
Oh, good point. Okay.
Well, in that case, I move to adopt the recommendations. Yeah.
Amendments in the attachment to the board report. One on page 16 of 59, and then pages 55 through 59. So I don't know whether the fire department is requesting those changes or whether you want the board to act without changes.
What we're recommending is that an ordinance being written to adopt the changes to the California code as the model for the Los Angeles Fire Code. And at the time this board report was put forward, those changes were in the process of being made through the Building Standards Commission, the governing body for the California Fire Code, and they were not printed in any other manner other than as this attachment. As you see in the attachment, it's a photocopy, yes. And you can see that they used cross out in some sections that they determined not to adopt. What the state of California does in their process is they adopt it through the Building Standards Commission, and then they send it to the ICC for publishing. So
when it says commission, it's the
State Building Standards Commission.
Not us. It hurts.
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't need to change anything. We can just adopt the report as provided. Okay, great. So move to adopt the recommendations in item 5B.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So 5C is the report by the department on the fast response vehicle and the advanced provider unit.
Good morning again, everybody. Dr. Mark Eckstein, EMS Bureau Medical Director and Commander. Gives me great pleasure to present our interim report on our fast response vehicles and our advanced provider response unit. As this board is aware, we introduced our first fast response vehicle back in September of 2015. This FRV was initially funded through the Mayor's Innovation Fund under a 12-month pilot. It was deemed to be very successful. Again, the goals of the FRV were to provide rapid response for high-priority EMS incidents, as well as fire suppression-related incidents. The FRV was staffed by 2 firefighter paramedics carrying a full complement of equipment that's carried on a paramedic ambulance, and they also carry water and basic fire suppression tools. The FRV not only provided initial life-saving care to our most critical patients, but they also provided rapid triage on scene to allow our cancellation of resources and cancellation of ALS resources, and when appropriate, request of basic life support resources. So they were very effective, decreased response times, decreased workload, more efficient use of the system. Since that time, we now have 2 fast response vehicles. One is at a Fire Station 9, largely serving the downtown Los Angeles area. That's staffed by 2 of our tactical EMS paramedics, and they serve dual roles in that regard. For example, FR9 quickly responded to the middle school shooting last week because they were on duty at that time. And our second FRV is out of Fire Station 91 in Sylmar, which serves a critical role due to the fact that it's our largest first in district. And when Engine and Rescue 91 are on a call, it's often a delayed response with fire and EMS activities. We are optimistic and looking forward to expanding the FRV concept, ultimately achieve 1 FRV per battalion. Again, it's a highly mobile resource that's multifaceted. for both EMS and fire suppression to provide treatment to our neediest patients, those most time critical, as well as the other end of the spectrum, triage appropriately and free up scarce emergency resources. The other aspect of the report was on our advanced provider response units. As this board is aware, the APRU concept, initially known as a NPRU, or Nurse Practitioner Response Unit, was first rolled out in January of 2016. This first resource was also actually received funding from several sources, including the Mayor's Innovation Fund, the Parsons Foundation, and the LA Fire Foundation. This was a novel concept where we created a team with a EMS advanced provider, which our first was a nurse practitioner, with a firefighter paramedic. They have a very wide scope of practice that far exceeds that of paramedics. And they had multiple missions, including responding to low acuity calls with the goal of providing on-scene treatment to ultimately treat and release low acuity patients, thereby freeing up our scarce ambulances and also mitigating the ongoing issue of ambulance wall time, particularly transporting low acuity BLS patients. Their other missions include responding to patients with mental health crises, and the APRU team performs medical clearance of these patients, and then rather than having an ambulance transport these patients to the closest emergency department, they transport these patients in mental health crises to mental health urgent care facilities, where the patients receive very, very quick, very, very rapid definitive care for the psychiatric emergencies, and they're also referred to ongoing mental health care rather than going to the emergency department, where typically there's no such mental health services available. Their expanding mission also is to medically clear public inebriates and transport those patients to the sobering center. And the other aspect of their mission is to respond to the so-called EMS super users. Those are patients who have become reliant on the 911 system for a myriad of what typically is constellation of chronic health conditions, substance abuse issues, mental health issues, social issues such as homelessness. And we've worked with, APRU works with multiple organizations, including Partners in Care, to try to provide definitive care for these patients' issues to end their reliance on the 911 system, ultimately help their quality of life. And that's also been very successful. As I mentioned in the last meeting of this board, the current APRU, AP-15, which is stationed out of Fire Station 15 by the USC main campus, that staff was detailed over to the airport for the LAWA EMS enhancement program. Upon termination of that pilot, middle of March, that team will go back to their assignment. And one of the other extremely important aspects of the APRU, this really represents a paradigm shift for our department. As you know, we created a public health unit within the EMS Bureau. You know, the spike in EMS call is largely due to low acuity patients, homeless individuals, substance abuse patients, and those struggling with mental health. And having firefighters and paramedics trained to provide life-saving resuscitative care is not a good match for the changing needs of our community. And that's where the APRU comes in. And also trying to be good stewards of limited taxpayer dollars. We've been very successful collaborating with healthcare providers. So we've created a very successful model of public-private partnerships. Cedars-Sinai Medical Center was the first entity to step up. We anticipate, and when the process of interviewing 15 applicants for the EMS advanced provider position, these are physician assistants or nurse practitioners, and we anticipate our next APRU to be AP-58, again, which is partially funded by Cedars. We hope that to be in service sometime in April. We've also received funding from Providence Healthcare, and we anticipate having 2 additional APRUs servicing the communities in the San Fernando Valley, also this fiscal year, probably later this spring. We've also received funding from Kaiser Foundation. We anticipate having a APRU servicing the Hollywood area out of Station 82 in the next few months. And also we anticipate funding in hand very soon from Dignity Health through the Office of California Medical Center to also provide coverage in the downtown LA and Skid Row area, where we have the greatest need. We're very optimistic that other stakeholders in terms of healthcare organizations in the city and the community will partner with us to offset the cost to ultimately achieve our preliminary goal of having 1 APRU in every battalion. Again, the preliminary metrics, we actually have a year and a half of metrics. They're very robust, they're very compelling, and it really, I think, represents something that's transformative for our department. And I don't use the word transformative lightly. This, due to the leadership of Chief Terrazas and support by this board and the Public Safety Committee and the entire City Council, we've been very, very successful. A number of paramedics have stepped up and want to work on these resources. Looking at the applications we've got, I think we have a very talented pool of applicants that we'll be hiring over the next 30 days or so. The response in the medical community has been very, very positive. And again, when we are able to free up a paramedic ambulance and take someone who's having a mental health crisis to a mental health urgent care facility and have them see a mental health professional in 20 minutes rather than having paramedics hold the wall for hours in a facility that's not LPS certified, where there's no psychiatric care, then have that patient occupy an ED bed for 3 to 5 days. This is really a game changer. So we're very, very excited about our success with these programs. I've often said that imitation is the highest form of flattery, and to that end, I've had colleagues, medical directors around the country, reach out to emulate our model. Our sister agency, LA County, is starting to develop their first APRU, and the feedback from all corners, not the least of which are internal stakeholders, firefighters working in those battalions where we've had the APRU, initially Station 64, then Station 15, now Battalion 4, has been exceedingly positive when they see the capabilities that the APRU brings to bear to bring significant help to patients, particularly our most vulnerable patients, and free up scarce resources and keep our paramedics off the wall. Has been extremely positive. So this is really taking our department to the next level to help really match the changing needs of the community with the right service. I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Great, thank you for this report. And mine is mostly a comment, which is I just wish that we had more of all of these, both the FRVs and APRUs, and that's also, what I hear from people in the field as well is that they see the value of this and how it really decreases some of the workload, especially the wall time. And there's very little that we can do about it as LAFD, and this can really help us alleviate that. So, I just think more of this soon.
Agreed. It seems the hospitals have gotten the word, and they're stepping up to offset the salaries, in the public-private partnership concept, which has obviously enabled us to expand. I anticipate approximately half of our 14 battalions will have one APRU by July 1, the way things are looking, which is a very aggressive timetable. So we've been very successful, and then we'll work on next fiscal year to target the remaining 7 battalions.
Great.
As a fellow health professional, I concur. This is truly transformational in terms of what you've accomplished.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and the numbers, like you said, are very compelling. My only comment, we need more, is, are you the 10-hour shifts? Are we going to expand that so that we have full coverage, 24 hours?
So that's a very
or FRV.
Yes,
No,
ma'am. That's a good question.
NPRU would be great too, but
yeah, that's a good question and very timely. So we're working with the fire chief to try to get 24-hour coverage for the FRVs, which is also a very attractive rotational opportunity for our paramedics. In terms of the APRU, we're going to be reaching out to labor to try to develop 20 hours of coverage a day, probably 2 10-hour shifts or 2 12s. We're working on that, but clearly, with this evolving model, we need to have coverage beyond the business hours, which is traditional for our special duty members. And particularly a lot of these patients, in terms of EMS, our usual spike in call load is a late afternoon, early evening. So we're working with multiple stakeholders, including labor, to really grow the program, expand the hours of operation, seek funding from both within the city coffers and private stakeholders, and we're also working aggressively towards grant funding as well to expand the program.
fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, actually, the hours. I had the same question on the hours. That is probably the most common concern that I hear from the field is, hey, it seems like a great unit, but either, the FRV in some cases sounds like goes unstaffed because it is they can't find somebody to work that shift length. I don't know that waiting around for SAW to dry up is going to work for us. I'm just not convinced that SAW is going to dry up fast enough. So certainly I would, I hope that those conversations bear fruit because I do see a lot of value in the unit. But obviously it only is valuable if it's staffed. For the APRU, so we if I just want to make sure I heard you right, so we should have 7 in the field by July 1?
That's the current goal, yes, sir. If based on the hiring, the money in hand, and the money in pipeline from our partners in the healthcare community.
Okay, I mean, that would be incredible if that happens. Right now, though, how many days a week are they staffed? It's 4 days a week. We have them in there?
Yes, sir. So in accordance with the current agreement with labor, special duty is a 4-10 schedule.
Uh-huh.
Again, the APRU team now is working on MedCart 51 at the airport for another 6 weeks or so for the LAWA and EMS enhancement pilot. So they're on a 4-10 schedule. The sober unit, which is a unique unit, they work currently 1,000 to 2,000 hours. But again, that particular unit, and you're correct, begs the need for a different set of hours than probably an AM and PM shift. So we're trying to be creative to meet those needs. And like you correctly pointed out, if no one's working the unit, it can't be effective.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like this is an attractive work assignment for our members based on the interest in the FRV, in addition to paramedics who've already expressed an interest to work on the upcoming APRUs. And we're trying to set at least, if not 24-hour coverage, at least split shifts. I think the 24-hour platoon model is not going to work for this type of unit because we want them to be out and about and be proactive. Yeah. But probably AM and PM shift like healthcare professionals have in the hospitals would probably be a good model.
Yeah, it sounds like certainly what I've heard from rank and file is 12 hours would be super attractive, but the 10 hours is problematic because there's a break in the day there. So, yeah, I would certainly encourage you to continue to solicit feedback from the field as far as what would be attractive to them, because obviously we need their buy-in to get the unit staffed. On the only thing I'd say about the AP is, I think it's a worthwhile goal to have one in every battalion. I'm not convinced that that's the best way to think about it, though. From the perspective of there are certain battalions that are going to get a lot more utilization, in which case I would rather see us have more staffing in Battalion 13, for example, or even in Hollywood, during the busiest hours, 7 days a week or whatever, 5 days a week, rather than have 4 days and 10 hours of coverage broken up across the battalion. So I would encourage you to rethink that question of whether or not the initial goal should be every battalion, or whether it should be that we tier our battalions out to say we want full coverage in our highest need battalions, and then the next tier would be, broadening it out to other battalions, just so we're getting the most bang for the buck. I just, the data better than I, but I think I'd encourage you strongly to think about that a little bit differently. I think we can get the coverage we need across many parts of the city without just sort of having arbitrarily saying one in every battalion. So anyway, I recognize there's a lot of considerations there, but
yes, your point's well taken. And again, we have some limited flexibility based on the funding source. Yeah. But example, the Kaiser unit was initially not going to be in Hollywood, but to your point, that's one of the areas of the greatest need in terms of the patient population the APRU will serve. Mm-hmm. So we will exercise some flexibility to put that unit there. Again, the unit that was funded by the city covers Battalion 13, and given the fact that the location of Skid Row, in Battalion 1 we'll have coverage with AP4, partially funded by Dignity Health, and the sober unit to help navigate, the homeless population there with a myriad of substance abuse and mental health issues. So we're working based on needs and metrics, as well as the funding source, to maximize coverage. And also keep in mind that even though the unit may be housed in a particular station, they have a very wide response area. They're not limited like traditional fire engines and ambulances in terms of their coverage area. So it affords us much more flexibility than our traditional resources.
Understood. Are they in the CAD now, both FRV and APRU?
Yes, sir.
They're
And
CAD-based.
They are both in the CAD, and we're going to be actually expanding the types of incidents for which they're actually going to be dispatched to, but they are in the CAD.
Great. And the radius, when I had ridden out with APR 15 about a year ago, the radius of 7 miles seemed like it was problematic from the perspective of they were spending a lot of time on the road. Have you changed that, or is it still 7 miles?
So it's 7 miles, but that's without AVL. So 7 miles as the crow flies, maybe 11 miles driving distance.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to improve when we incorporate AVL to the CAD. And part of that also is because it was a BLS company going ahead on those incidents, they were often canceled and kind of just chasing their tail. If they're dispatched alone, the yield, if they can get on scene, treat and release, the yield will be much higher. So we're kind of weighing the pros and cons. We want to maximize their impact. We don't want them just driving all over town. So we're constantly reanalyzing the dispatch algorithms. I expect to have additional changes pursuant to both the FRV and APRU and the next CAD enhancement, which should be in the next few months.
Okay, yeah, definitely interested to see how that goes. What do you so turning to the question of wall time? First, I think it would be probably worth putting on our agenda sometime in the future a full update on where we are with wall time and whether the EMS surge plan has helped with that. I know that we went through saw some significant increases in wall time due to flu. I think probably it would be worthwhile for the commission just to get an update on where we are with wall time. The last time that we had one, I think, was 4 years ago. So we could just add that to our agenda to come back to. But I'm curious on the APRUs. What do you think is the critical mass that gets us to, or A, have you seen any impact on wall time thus far in the areas that you've used it? If you have, how are you measuring that? And what do you think gets us to what's the critical mass we need to actually see some actual movement on the needle there?
So as you pointed out, we're still in the midst of the worst flu season in 10 years. So the emergency department volumes are up 50% across the board. We've had several days of 700 plus transports, which is over 100 more than our average daily transports. Keep in mind, in terms of looking at system-wide impact of an APRU, that's one 40-hour-a-week resource, as opposed to almost 140 ambulances on 24-hour shifts. So in terms of having a measurable impact citywide, that wasn't the intent. Again, it was a safety and efficacy study that's been demonstrated. But if you look at more on a micro level, again, when we have one patient who's in a mental health crisis, and that patient's medically cleared and transported by an APRU to Exodus, and that paramedic unit then is not on the wall for hours, that patient who needs psychiatric care obviously benefits. Then the next patient who needs time-critical ALS service is benefits. Perhaps their life is saved because that paramedic ambulance now is available in their first in. That's the downstream effect. But to see a system-wide change, I wouldn't anticipate we saw that until we get many more APRUs out there, because the system is so big. This is a 40-hour resource versus a system that is running 1,000 EMS incidents a day.
Okay, makes sense. Which I think actually goes to this point of thinking about what optimal coverage looks like there, because I know that for an ER, the difference between open and closed, which obviously has a huge impact on wall time, could be 10 patients a day. If we can divert 10 patients from an emergency room, in a day, that could be the difference between people sitting on the wall or not sitting on the wall. It's just, I think, I suppose it's a little bit of an academic question, but I think it is interesting to think about when we are looking at what the outcomes are that we want to see. How does our planned deployment model for the APRs kind of fit into that in terms of timing, length of shift, where we put them? So I am interested to continue that discussion to sort of see what that optimal coverage should look like there. Because as you say, we have a lot of flexibility around this. It's not like we have to have, the constant staffing in the way that we do for, fire suppression.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And to that end, that's why we, we're always analyzing the data. We analyze the data on a weekly basis. That's why we moved the first NPRU from 64s to 15s.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to maximize effectiveness. The other aspect I did not mention, for sake of time, is we got also funding through the Mayor's Innovation Fund to place 2 advanced providers at dispatch at MFC.
Yeah. Has that happened yet? Or?
Well, we're hiring APs
Still hiring.
over the next few weeks. We're interviewing. So we're interviewing 15 individuals over the next 3 weeks. Hopefully we'll find individuals who have the talent and skill set to be at MFC. Obviously, that's a much higher risk element of the program, which we'll be watching from a medical oversight perspective very, very carefully. All the logistics are in place at MFC, and that's just another level to try to weed out, for lack of a better term, very low-level calls to help patients who call 911 by default, who probably don't need 911, to result in what's called the no-send category, or dispatch an APRU non-emergency, or dispatch a taxi cab. So that also will have a quantifiable effect on wall time in terms of all these cumulative measures. We're not just sitting on our hands and saying throw more resources out there. We're talking about a paradigm shift to match the changing demands with our changing levels of service.
Sure. I know that having those APs at Metro, that will be a very interesting experiment to try to see how that does impact call load. I'm certainly excited to see that happen. When you created the APR and the FRV program, you did have targets in there. You didn't necessarily cite the targets when you gave us the percentages, but you didn't tell us how they performed against what the targets are. In a subsequent report, when you come back, I think it would be great to see, like, we established these targets at the beginning and this is how we performed against them. It's just hard to know, these could be great statistics, they could be mediocre statistics. I just have no idea, and only you know. So I think knowing how those look against targets helps us understand what they mean, because right now I'm just not sure what they mean.
Certainly. And keep in mind, our targets were, I hate to say arbitrary, but we had no track record or no other departments to compare to. There was no gold standard. And there were certainly things we've learned along the way and we continue to learn. But again, everything for these programs, particularly APRU, is framed first and foremost in patient safety. So we told our teams, never compromise patient safety to try to get the patient dispositioned for a treat and release. Use your medical judgment. So we're trying to marry patient safety with efficiency, with patient safety always being paramount. So the targets were arbitrary with nothing to go from. Now we're a year and a half into the program. We have a clear idea. We're constantly refining the system, and we're happy to come back with more metrics at your request.
Yeah, so totally fair that you kind of took a guess at what you thought the targets would be. In that case, then my request would be then when we get a subsequent report that we get a restatement of, look, we have a year and a half of data now. We understand how this works. This is what the targets are now moving forward that we're going to be measuring against. In the same way that we have in theory, 5-minute response time for the first on scene, and possibly some targets for how fast we get a paramedic on scene and things like that. But I think it would be great to say, what is our standard for an AP unit, recognizing that this is cutting edge and that we're kind of figuring this out as we go along. But that also gets to the question, I think, of cost benefit, and certainly don't mishear me. I completely agree with you. This is looking at the public health aspects of this and the way that we are starting to look at it. I completely agree with you. It's a transformative approach in our department. But I also want to go beyond just the sort of the surface level of, if it's conceptually a great idea, to the place of okay, here's the targets, and is that making a meaningful difference to us, or will it make a meaningful difference that makes it worth the expense? So I think that's, I would encourage you next time we get a data report from you to say, this, we've looked at the information, here's what the new targets are, here's the performance against the targets, and how, how does this help us make the case to do this more?
Of course.
On the FRV, just back there, I'm a big fan of the concept of an FRV out there. I think it gives us a flexibility and nimbleness that this department needs. If we're going to continue to expand, which I hope that we are, and if you're adding stuff into the CAD, and they are moving into a broader multi-purpose mission, which I think is a great idea, I would just encourage us to think about whether a modified brush patrol continues to be the best conveyance for them, or whether or not we should be looking at something that's more dedicated and designed for that purpose. It seems like having water on board has been useful in a number of cases. So that is a question, I think, for EOPS and the shops to think about. But I'm interested in them having the best possible tool for the job, so they can do the best possible job, which, again, I leave it to you guys to think about. In the last page of the report, on the Exodus, when the 58s, are they going to be able to transport to Exodus in the West LA area?
Yeah, it'll be based on judgment, which will be based on patient needs, stability, prevailing traffic conditions, and so forth. But the goal is the appropriate patients who are medically cleared, who are in need of psychiatric services or sobering center, the goal is to try to repatriate these patients with those specialized facilities and not transport them to an emergency department.
Okay, but the Exodus agreement we have would carry over to their West LA facility, should that be appropriate?
Correct. There's no catchment area in terms of Exodus.
Great. On the last page there, you talk about linking to clinic transportation resources, referring clients to in-home and senior support services. So that is, I think it's a really critical part of the mission here that we're doing. I would ask that when you make the strategic plan, you think about how that could be, that linking to clinic resources and referring clients can be broadened out to the broader fire department mission. Certainly, our firefighters, paramedics in the field need to offer a ride to the hospital if somebody wants to go. But I think making it actually as part of our strategic plan to equip them to broadly be able to provide referrals to say, hey, we'll take you, and here's some information for you because, by the way, there's a clinic around the corner, so next time you get sick, this may be an option for you that you haven't considered, or if you need insurance, here's a number to Covered California, but something to equip them with a standard way to provide resources and referrals to the individuals they're serving, because we can't load. We're not going to make the system change we want to make with 7 APRs, but we could do it with 106 paramedics or however many we have out there, if they're equipped with that. So I encourage you to think about what does broader adoption of that linking to resources look like? How can that be incorporated into the strategic plan as something that we could accomplish in the next few years? I remain excited about this project. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Yes.
I'd like to add a couple comments on this. And Dr. Eckstein gets a huge amount of credit. He's got a lot of good ideas. When I was first appointed, I came back and I went to the Firehouse World Conference and I heard about what Mesa, Arizona was doing with NPRUs. And I came back and he says, I have this already written up. I've been dying to do it for many years, and now we're rolling it out. I have to also acknowledge Dr. Hara. He arranged meetings with Kaiser, and they came through with funding. I have to acknowledge Mayor Garcetti, his innovation fund. They gave us the seed money to get the first unit off the ground. We had to prove the concept. The data, we did not have a baseline because this did not exist before. So the data was unknown. We thought it would be good. We just didn't know what level of effectiveness there would be. So we proved the concept. Now we're in the scaling phase. We have asked for, in the next year's budget, for funding to support these 7 APRUs for the firefighter medic, as well as for, I think, 4 FRVs in the budget. So now we want to institutionalize this, make this a part of our department, and grow it. The initial goals for deployment were 1 FRV per bureau, 1 APRU per battalion. And the thinking there is, well, that'll be something good to start out with, and then we can modify as needed. I do think they should have a home base in there, and then depending on peak call load and need, we could move things around. But I'm very, very proud of the accomplishments of our EMS Bureau, which we didn't have before, and of the people, all the people I mentioned and others, this commission, UFLAC, a lot of people were involved in getting it to this point, and it's going to get even better as we progress through this. So thank you for your support. Thank you, Dr. Eckstein.
Thank you, Dr. Eckstein.
I have one thing. I just got a text. It's related to the Coupa presentation earlier. We have our Coupa section, I didn't know it, is in Sacramento at a Coupa conference. And we received an award of excellence from the secretary appointed by the governor in front of 2,000 fellow Coupa coworkers. So good job to Coupa and the Fire Prevention Bureau, and their accomplishments are being acknowledged in Sacramento.
Okay, move to adopt the recommendation for item 5C.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moving on to 5D, which is report by the department on the mid-year budget for fiscal years 2017-2018.
Again, Emilio Rodriguez, Administrative Services Bureau. Again, reporting on the mid-year status for the department's operational budget. Of our $657 million budget, the department is projecting a year-end deficit of approximately $17 million, attributed to a spike in overtime expenditures for various wildfire deployments inside and outside the city, fireboat overhaul costs for the port, historical fleet parts deficit, and increase in contracted brush clearance costs. Our mid-year report to the Council's Budget and Finance Committee, currently under review by the City Administrative Officer, addresses various adjustments between salaries and expense accounts to meet funding needs through year-end, specifically for boat repairs and projected gaps in operating expenses. Some of the other needs I mentioned earlier were addressed in the prior financial status report. The status of our mid-year request will not be known until the CO has released a report to the committee, which is anticipated in later this month or more realistically in March. Should be noted, I do want to emphasize that mutual aid overtime, fireboat repairs, and contracted brush clearance costs are subject to reimbursement, so that's not entirely a hit to the department's budget. We're closely monitoring all accounts to reduce deficit to the extent possible. The report before you also provides an update on recruit training on page 2. The department is on track for training of 190 recruits, less attrition, of course. This includes training for 48 new firefighters to be funded under the SAFER grant that the department received over the last several months. That concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So, just to clarify about so there's mutual aid stuff that's outstanding. So then, are we going to get reimbursed, and is this number going to be reduced?
That's true. We get it's for strike team deployments, brush strike team deployments, and the timing of that is unknown, but we are going to get reimbursed.
Do we know what the numbers
my question is if it's, do we know how much? And
well, we've budgeted $3 million in the current fiscal year, given the realities of, the invoicing process and staffing considerations, but the actual amount's going to be spread out over the next 2 or 3 years. But we are poised to recapture everything that's spent for wildfires outside the city.
So is it just the timing about the reimbursement?
It's partly an issue of timing, and we're trying to spend in the neighborhood of 13 to 15 million just on all the wildfire deployments inside and outside the city. Primarily because of the heavy brush season, the wet weather season last year, which is catching up to us this year. And we do have all the billings in motion over the next several months to recapture that.
Okay.
I had a longer discussion with June Gibson yesterday about the deficit, and a large majority of that will be reimbursed. We do have IGT funding that will be reimbursed to us. They were previously paying us 50% of the cost. Now it's 100%, so that's going to go up. The haul out, the port's going to reimburse us for that cost. That's $5 million. All haul outs eventually. That'll include all of them. The other ones are the brush strike team reimbursements. So all of that coming together, we hope to have a large percentage of that deficit covered. The unknown is the timing when it gets here. It may be this fiscal year. It may be into next fiscal year.
Okay.
Just a quick question on the SAFER grant. Are those resources going into the field on July 1? Or when did those resources hit the field?
The class graduates in mid-June, and the engines will be activated in the first pay period in July.
Okay, that's what we're. So we'll get 4 additional engines coming in online.
That's correct. There'll be 4 engines. That's engine 1, 20, 73, and 75.
Okay. Move to adopt the recommendation for item 5D.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's adopted. 5F is report by the department on the LAFD Information Technology Bureau mid-year update.
Good morning. Scott Porter, Chief Information Officer, IT Bureau. Madam President, Commissioners, Chief. This is the mid-year update for the IT strategic plan. We are in the process, when the Chief's strategic plan comes out later this month, we will then quickly behind that revisit the IT strategic plan. So when we first did this in 2016, really the most important part of this plan is that it's tied directly to the fire chief's strategic plan. We don't want to be investing in technology or doing things simply because they're fun and interesting, but because they actually advance the department in some way. The construct of the strategic plan, we came up with sort of 10 initiatives. I'll quickly run through the highlights of where we're at on those initiatives. I do fully expect that most, if not all of them, will make their way into our next strategic plan, but maybe some adjustments in the alignment and the projects within those initiatives so that they line up directly with the fire chief's plan. The first initiative is IT service delivery. Essentially, this is one of two bookends that basically are the nuts and bolts of how we deliver IT services in the department, and making some changes to how we do that. In this mid-year report, and since the last time we talked, we have made some organizational changes. We've consolidated how we do software development and support. We have made some changes to standardize how we do IT service delivery. So we've made really good progress in this area, and I think we're going to start bearing the fruits there in our ability to not only support the members, but also to execute these projects in a much more efficient way. So that's on that one. The second area is reporting and analytics. The big change here for us was trying to consolidate around a platform that we could consume much more of the department's data assets in a way that allows us to do reporting and advanced analytics. We had a lot of disparate systems. We had a lot of spreadsheets. We had sort of an investment in Palantir that was brought to us from the police department. That's changing now, and we're centralizing on a platform called Power BI. There's a sort of cloud technology component that allows us to quickly put in lots of data and do deep analytics on that data very quickly, and also to take data from lots of sources. We're working actually closely with ITA on this project because ITA in the city is also standardizing on Power BI platform. The fire department is actually kind of a leader in terms of departments in our use of this technology. And we've got a lot of high expectations. So FireStat is now moved off of Palantir and using this Power BI capability. We're going to be starting to see ePCR data now coming in against our CAD data and other data sources. But the real sort of win here is this year, we'll be moving some of this dashboarding, reporting capabilities out into the bureaus, the bureau commanders, the fire chief on his desk, and people that actually need to see this data in order to make decisions will have it available to them. So this platform gives us a lot of flexibility there. So that's kind of an exciting area. In the emergency response systems, this is kind of a catch-all for our major emergency mission-critical systems. CAD is the number one there. CAD, the theme of CAD this year and will continue through July is AVL. We're making lots of stride and enhancement in AVL. We did submit a report back to Budget and Finance and Public Safety Commission on the status of our AVL, and we expect that to come up shortly for the commission, both those commissions to hear that. But the short story on AVL is we're on track to do another field test in March. That one likely will stick and stay in place, and then we'll start to analyze which types of responses are best suited for AVL. But lots of investment in the infrastructure, technology, enhancements to CAD, and sort of making AVL ready. So a good story there, and next time I report back, we'll have implemented AVL in the field, be using it, and then we'll have some really good data about its effect. And kind of just a quick side note on that one, we've done a lot of research with other agencies as well, and sort of lessons learned on AVL. That's a technology a lot of people like to talk about, but it's operationally almost as complicated as it is technically. sort of the operational knock-on of how we can use this new tool. The message really there is that it is just one tool. Just like CAD has lots of different ways to dispatch units, this is just one more aspect of CAD that's going to give us another way. So that's going very well. Dispatch communications and continuity of operations, this one, not as much progress was expected or planned in this particular period, but this is one where we're starting to look at our OCD backup facility. We're looking at the 4 bureaus in terms of what types of degraded mode capabilities that they should have. Once AVL is kind of in place, we expect to revisit this one kind of in the July to September timeframe as we look at sort of the whole CAD infrastructure and especially around our emergency operations and communications in a degraded mode. So that one is sort of forthcoming. Fire station alerting, the story there was we had asked for this fiscal year for $3 million to begin a full replacement project on fire station alerting. We were awarded $1 million. So we sort of changed plans a little bit, and we focused on the network technology, which is really the network is the piece, the old sort of telephone lines that are connecting all the fire stations. Those are really susceptible to failure. So we've been working closely with ITA, and we're about to make moves to begin to move off of those older lease lines and move on to the city's fiber network. But keep the essential fire station alerting system in place as it is, but replace the network. We have in this year's budget request that same $3 million to really start that project. If we get that, then we'll start to look at actually replacing some of the pieces in there. I think, and we're within a month or two working with ITA, that this network replacement is actually going to reduce the number of fire stations that actually go out because of network outages. So we'll have some data for you on that next time we report back. Fire inspection and prevention systems. This one we focus primarily on brush. We made lots of enhancements to the brush clearance units software, and now we're starting to look and evaluate sort of what is next for fire prevention. Our goal is still to have one enterprise fire inspection and management system, one platform across all of the different parts of Fire Prevention Bureau. We're going to take the experience that we had from Brush and Development Services, and we're evaluating a couple of alternatives as to how to move forward with an enterprise system. So I would expect next time I give you a report here, we'll have selected sort of our alternative and a plan going forward for that. But we made really good progress in Brush in 17, and we're set up very well for a good 18 season in terms of their technology and what they need for Brush. Workforce management systems, this is sort of a catch-all for our HR and related systems. One of the things about the reorganization of the various IT components in the department was to try to wrangle in the many, many systems that we have that maintain member data. Today we have probably 5 or 6 systems you could look for a member's phone number in. And sort of depends on which one you're used to and which one you want to go to. This is also about trying to get this sense of what is the system of record. What's the official system of record for a personnel file? Well, it's personnel, but we maintain a lot of those records as well. So it's sort of aligning ourselves with other departments, but also within our own department and shutting down systems that we can no longer support and investing in systems that we can. So we're developing a plan in this area. And working closely with both personnel and with ITA on other sort of HR-related citywide systems and figuring out where we fit in there. So this is mostly planning, with the exception of a couple of smaller systems that we have shut down and are starting to move over to other systems. The big project that's coming up, we're actually going to be starting the RFP process this month, is really the NSS, or Network Staffing Replacement Project, and that is in this bucket. That was funded for $500,000 this fiscal year. We expect to bring a contractor on before July to help us begin that replacement of that project.
Do you have to go through like a historical resources protection process for the NSS, or no?
You want me to answer that?
Yeah.
Right. So that's 7. Voice radio system, actually we have some really good news to report. We did get a final approval on a joint purchase of radios with the police department. The fire department has purchased 3,500 new multi-band radios, which Not only are they new radios, which is great because the old radios were becoming very difficult to maintain, but operationally they're significant because they have this capability of being programmed to operate on many different bands. And in our business, maybe even more so than, definitely more so than the police department, it's very important for us to work seamlessly with our partners, especially with brush response, and these radios are going to give us that capability. We received the radios the way they were purchased by the city. They were purchased on a lease agreement, so basically we receive them by sort of just looking at them, and then we send them all back to Motorola. Motorola takes possession, and then in the contract, Motorola is responsible for sort of the initial setup and configuration. Likely the fire department will be well ahead. The police department had both portables and mobiles. We only have portables in this deal. So we're developing a plan in our communications section to get these out before the brush season. So there's a whole sort of training and evolution, not significantly different, but different enough that they do require training and a handoff with field personnel. So that's in progress. Fleet and asset management, we continue to work with GSD on the M5 implementation for our fleet management. So basically the fire department is one of three primary departments, GSD, PD, and fire, implementing the fleet management system that's being run primarily from GSD. And then the 10 is sort of the other bookend, right? This is the technology bits and our ability to move to advanced technology, taking advantage of cloud computing and what we're doing on the desktop and mobiles and all of that. So I'm happy to talk about any of that stuff, but usually that's the least interesting. So that's my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I got to say thank you to Mr. Porter. He brings organization and expertise in this area. When I took this position, we didn't know what we didn't know. And I knew that was going to be a lot. and it's proved to be correct. It is a lot. And when technology issues pop up, we turn to Scott and say, okay, tell us, how do we do it? What does it cost? Who else is doing it? And he's been spot on. He has all. If he doesn't have the answers right then and there, he'll have it by the next time we meet. So great work. Keep up the progress. And we're very grateful that you're on our team.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate
Thanks for the
that.
written report.
Thank
too.
you. Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
You bet. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, move to adopt the recommendation for item 5F.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we don't have any public comments, so we can
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.